There's no problem with duality from the point of view of non-duality. In fact, from the point of view of non-duality, there is no duality. However, if we are in duality, at least if we feel we are in duality, we cannot legitimately say we don't have a problem with it. It is not possible. It's not possible to feel that we are in duality, in other words, to feel that we are a separate self, and not to have a problem.
Well, see, I would again want to distinguish between separate self and different self, different manifestation of the absolute.
That's it. If it's a different manifestation, then it's fine. If we know that in essence the two manifestations are one, then that's not duality. That's what I call non-duality. That what we essentially are is not two.
Right. That's in the background. And at the same time, in the foreground could be the dance of two different,
Yes.
totally different beings.
Yes.
Appreciating each other's difference.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
Yes. So as long as the dance is taking place in the foreground, and we know that in the background we are one, then that would be non-duality. So from that point of view, there's no problem with what occurs in the dance in the foreground. But if we've forgotten the background in which we are one, and then this becomes a dance between two essentially separate beings, if that's what we feel, we cannot then say there's no problem, because there is by definition a problem for the self that thinks it is a separate self. But yes, if we know this background that we, in our essence, we share, then there is a great appreciation of the difference at the level of the dance. There can be an exploration of that difference, a celebration of that difference, and an enjoyment of it.
Well, that's what allows us to have a full human life. Really.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, in other words, in order to really appreciate the multiplicity and diversity of appearances, we have to first know the essence of experience. In other words, to really know the non-dual essence of experience, it is precisely that then allows us to go back out, apparently out, into the world of multiplicity and diversity and truly enjoy it for what it is. That's when, for instance, relationship between two people, between two apparently separate people, really flourishes in all its richness and diversity, when there is this shared understanding. But the two apparent characters can be from two different planets. And in fact, very often in a relationship, the more polarized the planets, you have Mars over there and Venus over here, and it makes for a very colorful, very rich experience in relationship at the level of the minds and bodies. But what enables us to truly appreciate that is this deeper understanding that we are one.
Mm-hmm. You know, one of the things Swami Prajnapada said was, everything is different, nothing is separate.
Say it again. Everything is different.
Nothing is separate.
Yes, that's right. Everything, at the level of things and objects, there is difference. Everything.
Every manifestation.
Everything. At the level of things, they are different.
The level of manifestation, even moments.
At the level of manifestation, exactly.
Moments of experience.
Yes. Every
moment of experience is completely.
Absolutely. Every single moment, every single thought, every sensation, every perception, everything at that level.
The whole thing can be celebrated. It's like a complete dance of the universe in that sense.
Yes, yes. But what enables us to really appreciate the manifestation and to celebrate it is to know that in reality, all these things which are different are not really separate things. they appear to be like that at the level of manifestation. Once we know that they are not really separate things, there are no things or others, then we are able to truly appreciate the appearance of things and others, and to dance as one of those things in relationship with life, with experience, with people.
I'm a little bit frustrated sometimes with Eastern teachings, or say contemplative teachings, non-dual teachings, that seem to put a greater emphasis on the emptiness than on the form.
I agree.
From the point of view of overcoming the separate self, one has to do that.
Yes.
And once one's done that, I often don't see the flow back into form and separation of self.
That's very true, and part of the reason of this, or at least until recently, this overemphasis on the emptiness aspect, the void aspect, the separating yourself out from the body, mind, well, what I call the second stage, the intermediate stage, is because for almost all of us, certainly for most of us here of our generation, we've gone, many of us physically to India, but all of us, one way or another, philosophically to India to get this teaching. That was the only place it was available until recent, apart from odd pockets. It was basically available in the East, and the Eastern cultures, for instance, India, had this denial of the world and the body was very prevalent in the culture, nothing to do with the spiritual tradition, just in the culture. So even if you read Ramana Maharshi, and particularly the commentaries on Ramana Maharshi by his closest disciples, you hear these phrases like the dreadful world and the despicable body and the dangerous women and all this. It's keep the whole lot at bay.
If you just get involved in all of that, you're really sunk.
Yes, you go there, you're lost in samsara. So the emphasis was always come back to the witnessing background of awareness. Keep the mind, the body, and the world at bay. And this understanding, which is a halfway understanding, was enshrined in the Indian culture. The entire culture, in general, took its tune from that understanding. But things have changed now, because the understanding was then exported to the West, and it found itself in a culture that had a totally different approach to the world and the body. In fact, our Western culture was just going headlong into the world and the body without this understanding. So the emptiness teaching, the teachings of the void, found themselves being explored in a culture that did not want to put the world and the body at bay. On the contrary, we were all loving experiencing the world and the body, and hence this next stage of the teaching, this last aspect of the teaching, where the void, the transcendent void, it has to go back out into the world, and we have to discover that awareness is not just transcendent, it is immanent. It is not just at the background of experience, it is in the heart of experience. And that is one of the one of the services that Western culture has done to the non-dual teaching recently.
Actually, the correction for the Indian idealism you're talking about actually did exist in India and traveled to Tibet also in the form of Tantra.
Yes,
true Tantra.
Absolutely.
Which is really, ultimately it's about the love affair between form and emptiness.
Yes, of course. But those teachings, I'm just making a very generalized comment about Indian culture. Of course, that there was the esoteric aspect of the non-dual teaching, which found its expression in Tantra. But the Tantrics were considered dangerous by the orthodoxy in India. That they were the secret practitioners up in the hills and the mountains, and they weren't mainstream India. So what is happening now is that what we've been talking about this week is the tantric understanding. But it's not a secret understanding. It doesn't have to be explored on the edges, on the fringes of society, up in the caves and the mountains, away from society. Because our culture was already so disposed towards loving the world and loving the body, this non-dual understanding can now infiltrate that attitude towards the world and the body, and hence we can totally celebrate this understanding in the fullness, the richness, the colour of life and relationship. Now, for many of us, and this was certainly the case for me, I had to take a step back from the world. I did it for rather longer than was necessary, perhaps, but perhaps because I didn't have clear teachings at the time. But for most of us, we have to take this first step back. I am the presence of awareness that knows the body-mind world. We have to establish that, but it's only halfway. You discover the void, it's only halfway, and it's a necessary stage for most people. But it's an incomplete, and it doesn't deliver full peace and happiness until we then go back to the world and marry these two together. And then we go totally back out into life and find this understanding at its heart. You're right, it's the tantric approach.
And that feels like a complete teaching.
A complete teaching, absolutely.
Not just an ultimate teaching.
It's a complete teaching, exactly. It's a complete teaching in which there is no exclusion. These two paths that I give, from the conventional point of view to the awareness plus objects point of view, is a path of exclusion. I'm not the mind, I'm not the body, I'm not the world. Neti, 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 neti. I'm not this. I'm in the background. That's halfway. It's the path of understanding. But the second stage is the path of inclusion. It goes back in the opposite direction. That's the path of love. Inclusion. Everything is included. That is, as you rightly say, that completes the teaching. The void is just halfway. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah.